Hello. Thank you for listening to and watching You Had Options. This episode, I have Tony from Fest. Check it out. Fest Club. We talk a lot about wrestling. It's great. So good. We talk about some interesting sponsorship opportunities that he has for Fest. That's towards the end of the episode, so listen through to the whole thing. But yeah, great conversation, real fun. Check out some of the stories we talk about of the people, the wrestlers you might not know that Tony brings up. Great, yeah. Make sure to follow the Fest FL on Instagram. Make sure to follow You Had Options. It's You Had Options on Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Wrestling as difficult or in the same vein as booking punk bands?
You want the long or the short?
Man, I got time. I got nothing but hard drive space and time.
Is this on the show?
I have begun.
Oh, okay. With wrestling, it was different. Like when we first started, nobody gives you like a playbook on how to like book wrestling shows.
Right.
And a lot of people that book wrestling shows are wrestlers or ex-wrestlers in a lot of ways. So us coming at it as a fan aspect, we had a vision of how we wanted it was basically like, I had been going to a lot of indie shows and seeing like the good stuff I liked about indie shows and stuff I didn't like about indie shows.
Right.
And so one of the big things we wanted to present as Fest Wrestling was an environment where wrestlers feel comfortable as well as attendees feel comfortable with like gender roles, race, sexuality, things like that. Also, putting on a production where, especially here in Florida around that time, there was a lot of stuff where it was like, oh, you're the brown person, you're the bad guy,
Shit.
or
old school. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if there was an intergender match, it was like the guy, like, go back in the kitchen, woman, stuff. And things have changed so much now to the point where I feel like the things that we were trying to change in Fest Wrestling, I don't know if we had any impact on it. I would like to think we did.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's necessarily as needed as when we first started, several years ago.
Okay.
Booking wise, it's difficult because, we tried, a lot of it was on our end too, was we tried to put the ethics that we come from in our punk, liberal society world that we live in into wrestling. And so, a lot of times you would find great people to work with. Effie always comes to mind as like one of the best to work with at the time. And then there was some people who I will not name that were like really difficult in the early years to book and deal with because they didn't hold those same values.
Yeah.
And so it was like anything else, just same as if with a band. If years and years of booking Fest, there's been a few bands that were like, you don't need to come back. and the same thing happened with wrestling. It's definitely hard. It's hard. We learned a lot, and it was kind of like a lot of trial by fire. And I still say that like every time you put on any production, be it wrestling, rock and roll, punk plays, anything, you learn as you go.
Yeah.
But just like with doing shows, man, when I was fucking 16 putting on shows, nobody taught us how to do shows. A lot of things you fucked up and a lot of things you learn from experience and learn from other people coming through to teach you the ways,
For sure. Do you guys own a ring? Do you own your own ring?
Yeah, we bought a ring, but we actually, not a lot of people know this. We actually sold our ring during this year.
Really?
Um, yeah, it was more of like a thing of like uh, I was gonna pull back as many shows as we were doing with Fest Wrestling,
Yeah.
even before uh, COVID and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
We're,
And I was kind of looking to like be like, well, we have this ring. I don't want it to just sit in my
yeah.
garage forever. Somebody else can probably use it. And so I sold it to a company called Enjoy Wrestling. They're out of Pittsburgh. In
Okay.
fact, this weekend they're filming their first show.
Mm.
And it's Scotty Swimba who does all the Fest motion graphics stuff and did all the Fest wrestling editing and motion graphics.
Yeah.
Max Greg, who plays in World's Scariest Police Chases, and did commentary for Fest Wrestling,
Yeah.
and Dan Rock, who is in Police Chases as well,
Mm-hmm.
and does Commonwealth Press.
Oh,
So
okay.
I feel like that's a good place for our ring to go.
Yeah.
They're going to carry on the tradition of pretty much the same things Fest Wrestling believed in. Those guys were very much a part of Fest Wrestling. And yeah, and at the end, also, like, man, then our ring will be in the Northeast. If I ever want to do a show, bring Fest Wrestling to Northeast maybe later this year or next year, our fucking ring's right there.
That's sick.
It's a lot easier than driving it north.
Right.
You know,
Pack up a couple of U-Hauls and go up there. Yeah.
yeah, because honestly, like we right before quarantine, we were actually working with some folks in Richmond area and trying to do a Fest Wrestling show in Richmond. And I was like, oh, if we get Richmond, then I was from Roanoke originally, so I was like, I could probably do a show in Roanoke, and then maybe we could go up north and maybe do like one in Jersey because House Independence was doing a wrestling show. I feel like if we decided we wanted to do Fest Wrestling out of the state of Florida, it wouldn't be that hard. There's a lot of folks that love what we've done and are interested. And I think through our connections with Punk World, it'd be cool to like do it in venues and DIY spaces.
Yeah.
But right now, as you all know,
Wow.
2020 and still to 2021, and
Yeah.
God knows for how long, things like that just aren't feasible.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was better to take the ring and put somewhere else. But yeah, we rented a couple of times and had really bad experiences with the folks that we were renting from. And so we decided, fuck it, got a loan from the bank and just bought one.
That's sick. Yeah, because people like going to wrestling matches or just even watching promotions on TV, they never think like logistical stuff. And just listening to like podcasts of like wrestlers talk about indies, like, setting up the ring being the most like, it just sounds terrible, but it's just one of those like,
it's not that bad.
Really.
It's really not. And you know what? It was really cool because what we did is we opened up just kind of like we do with Fest. We opened up to volunteers to kind of help out. We had different folks that would come to our shows. And so people would come up to me afterwards like, hey, man, I really love what you're doing. Is there any way I can help out? And so we're like, yeah, next show, give me your email address. Next show up like, 10 a.m. and we're going to unload the damn ring. And it was kind of like a cool like family. We did that. We also decorated a lot with our shows.
Yeah.
Like everyone had a weird kind of holiday theme.
Yeah.
And we would so we had people that would volunteer to help out with that. And it was like a real family, and I won't lie, man. I very much miss it. I really do. And felt like we had a lot of cool stuff and helped a lot of people. And I hope, everybody was able to walk away with Fest Wrestling with a good memory, a good experience. And it's not over yet. We'll be back. It's just, we got to wait.
Yeah. I think I can't remember if it was the first Fest Wrestling at Fest where you had Ruby Riott right before she went to WWE, or maybe was that the first one or the second one?
That was the first one we did at Fest, but it wasn't our first show.
Oh, okay.
We had done a show only like September, so a month before. So that was like our second Fest Wrestling show. But
that was really cool because like I follow, Reddit, Squared Circle, and so being able to see her, and then like I don't know, a couple months later, see all this like new recruits or new hires at WWE, and to see
Yeah.
her, I was like, what? I think that's a cool thing that you guys have done too, where you're putting like bigger name indie wrestlers and people on the come up, putting that in front of people who might not be able to see them anywhere else.
Yeah, at Fest it's a lot easier. We have a little bit more budget to do things at Fest
Yeah.
Wrestling, and the whole show we put on during Fest weekend was called "We Are Family" for a reason. It was the whole idea behind that was very much similar to how we do Fest. Let's bring people from all over into one place and really showcase a lot of wrestlers as well as showcase a lot of other promotions, which was very at the time uh, not done a whole lot in indie wrestling.
Yeah.
Indie wrestling was done a lot of ways like we're this promotion and we just kind of like have blinders on to other promotions, or it's a very jealousy type thing. And we were like the opposite. We were like, no, it's cool to like work with other companies. Like, Eric Cannon up in Minneapolis has First Wrestling. And then there was people from Seattle at Defy Wrestling that were awesome to work with. And I can't remember what other promotions we worked with, but those two names really come together. And Eric was so helpful in that, I met him through Less Than Jake guys.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early years of Fest Wrestling, he was extremely helpful in like, hey, this is what we do. This is things you should look out for. It was awesome. We've had a lot of help from wrestlers, that have showed us the ropes to say of how to do it.
Yeah.
And then I think in trade, a lot of them were really stoked to be able to come to Fest to see all the bands and hang out. I know Matt Cross and Eric Cannon are the two tops, and Mikey from Ugly Ducklings, of course.
Yeah.
Those guys, being a part of Fest was just as they nerd out about that just as much as we were nerding out about working with them and other wrestlers. But
Yeah.
the Ruby Riot thing was awesome. I was really stoked too that when WWE, if you have the network, they did a little mini doc on the upcoming how Ruby Riot came to be Ruby Riot.
Or is it like formerly known as or something? That's like
I think that's what it's called. Yeah. And they reached out to us and we're like, hey, we want to use some Fest Wrestling footage. We want to talk about her. And the whole doc starts with that show that you were watching where she wins the belt.
That's sick.
And it was great. It would have been awesome if WWE would have given us some money since we were a small time company.
Yeah.
Instead, they gave us like a couple of tickets to a house show in Gainesville. So thanks. You got all this fucking money and you can't help us out. But, it was what it was. It was cool.
Yeah. I guess that's, it's funny because I'm in Mobile, Alabama, and the closest like cool wrestling promotion is in New Orleans, Wildcat. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yeah, we had Wildcat do a showcase match at We Are Family.
Oh, cool.
2 fests ago.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, like you were saying, wanting like whenever stuff gets normal again, wanting to do wrestling shows in like bars and like normally. I went to one of their shows over there in this huge like Buffalo Wild Wings sized bar, and it was packed out, and I was like, wow, so many people are here. And I was just kind of like taken back because this was when I was getting back into following wrestling. And it was crazy. It seems like with every show, wrestling show, they try and get like somebody who's in WWE or somebody who like a big name, I guess, to draw people. And for that show, they had Sandman versus who do you wrestle? Or they had Sandman and Mr. Anderson, Ken Anderson.
Okay.
And so,
did Sandman actually wrestle, or did he just kind of walk around and be a drunk?
Kind of be a drunk dude. I think he did a couple. He did walked out to Metallica and walking through the crowd. He had the kendo stick. I think he hit somebody with the kendo stick. That might have been the extent.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I grew up loving wrestling. I grew up in Virginia, and I was a big NWA fan. Then went to WCW, and then I kind of died out. Like right when the time, like when I was in high school, Like it was just kind of like WCW was really kind of lame. WWE was really lame. And a lot of my friends just weren't into wrestling anymore. And it was kind of
What year
like,
was this? So I'm not trying to age you. I'm trying to get a gauge of like.
oh no, the early 90s.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Like I probably dipped out like 90,
Yeah,
maybe 91.
yeah.
Uh, and then I graduated, went to college, and while I was in college, a buddy of mine had a tape, and it was fucking ECW.
Yeah.
And he was like, check this shit out. And we were like, what? And I had a good buddy, Jake Crown, he lives here in Gainesville with me, who was part of Fest Wrestling for a little bit too. And Jake and I lived in a house with like 10 other dudes.
Yeah.
And that was also right around the time that Monday Night Nitro was going. And so we would have these Nitro parties and hang out, just a bunch of punks drinking 40s and watching Nitro. And then we would like drive once in a while to Philly and go see ECW live.
Shit. Wow.
And so growing up, I was like, man, Sandman, all this stuff. And then as you know, it's kind of sucks sometimes to be like a fan of wrestling and then you get into wrestling, like the other side, like behind the curtain of it.
The sausage is made. Yeah.
And you learn a lot of stuff, especially in wrestling. They're like, oh, this person's not a very good person.
Yeah, for sure.
You know? So like for me, it was like, I don't ever want to deal with Sandman. So we would just, we had the beautiful thing of working with Leva Bates for Fest Wrestling. So if like, especially like, I think one of the shows we did was during Fest weekend, and we had a big battle royal, and it was like, Leva, this would be hilarious if you just came out as Sandman.
Yeah. We
had her come from the balcony and everything, and you can look at it. It's on YouTube somewhere. Leva Bates as Sandman, and she nailed it. And I was like, that was way better than having Sandman. So Sandman. Much cooler, so much better. So it's kind of like with Fest too. There's there's not many bands that I wouldn't work with.
Right.
But there's certain bands kind of like, man, it'd be cool if we had this band, these old timers come, but they're going to be a big pain in the ass. They're going to ask for a shitload of money. Why don't we just have this band we really like play those songs as a cover set at Fest?
Yeah.
And people will just have just as much fucking fun.
Right.
So it's kind of, sometimes you just got to figure out what's feasible.
Yeah. And I can only assume you're talking about Smashing Pumpkins and You Vandal when you're saying that.
Well, I don't know if Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins are jerks. Billy Corgan might actually be cool. He's way into wrestling, did the true, NWA thing.
NWA.
But we could never afford Smashing Pumpkins.
Right, yeah.
That's 100% given. Like that's way too over. That's stadium shit.
Yeah. Being in Florida, there's a lot of cool promotions doing a lot of cool stuff, especially, I guess once you start moving towards Central Florida, especially.
There are just too many wrestling promotions in Florida. There's just too many wrestlers, too many promotions. It's just it's kind of hard to be a promotion because of that.
Yeah.
You're really it's like if you live in like a town and there's like 8 fucking venues doing shows all the time. It's hard to do shows for rock shows, and punk shows stuff. So it's hard being in Florida. That's why I'm kind of like, I love everybody who came to Fest Wrestling and supported Fest Wrestling for the years. We had so many people drive from out of town, from out of state that were regulars who would come to the shows. But still, we were bringing in maybe 100, 120 paid at the door each show. And so it was like, in the end, it was like every show we were just losing money. And it wasn't because the acts were like charging us too much. The wrestlers were really trying to work with us. It was just that it's hard,
Yeah.
If we were one of 2 promotions running in Florida, then all of the people that were in a 4-hour radius would drive and come see us. But when you had us running promotions in Jacksonville, multiple promotions in Orlando, multiple promotions in Tampa, you've got people running in Ocala, which was like, 40 minutes away. And there's only so many indie wrestlers. So all the same wrestlers were wrestling for the same promotions. And when we first started doing Fest Wrestling, it was a little different because we were one of the only people bringing people from out of Florida in.
Yeah.
And so we were showcasing a lot of cool talent. so people that were into it were driving from out of town, like, oh my God. And then all those talent, of course, it's not their fault. They're trying to make it work.
Right.
So if they would come down once they got a foothold in Florida, they were just doing everywhere in Florida, and so it just kind of, it became hard,
Yeah.
it really did.
Yeah. That makes sense, Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Y'all should come up to Mobile. There's nobody up here.
Hell yeah.
There's a lot.
I'll be. Yeah.
There's a lot
I last time I was in Mobile, I played a show. It had to have been 94, 95. And it was this last or second last day of tour. We had played Biloxi, which was always a staple for us. Great shows in Biloxi. We played the Little House, which was this guy, Lee Boyle. And he lived in a trailer with his family, and then next door was a trailer that they had gutted and punk shows happened in.
Yeah.
And like everyone in the 90s played fucking Lee's house. It was great. And then so we're like, okay, have book your own fucking life. We go to Towels in Mobile, Alabama. And it was Towels, and on the outside of it, it said cold beer for days, FER.
Yes.
And it was just like a fucking dive bar. And I remember we played there, and no local. And I can't remember, it was like some band that was on Sub Pop, and we were like, ooh, it wasn't like a big Sub Pop band.
Yeah.
We were like, holy shit, it's a band on Sub Pop Records.
Right.
And I remember us playing, and people like playing pool and just screaming at us to like shut the fuck up and play like Skinnerd and stuff. And we're like, let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, sounds about right. That's Mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I went to one of the local promotions shows maybe 3 years ago, and it's the location was the parking lot of a Golden Corral. And so just to set the scene, and the big draw, the big name was Heidenreich.
I don't know who that is.
He was part of or is that his name? He was part of the reboot of LOD when it was just in like 2000, where it was just Animal, and
and they were just subbing different people in with Animal.
Yeah. But anyways, so it was Heidenreich wrestling a no holds barred falls count anywhere in against Alabama Doink. So there's a big stink where a guy.
There was an Alabama Doink. I remember hearing rumors that there was Doinks like everywhere. Everybody had their own Doink.
Alabama Doink. He claimed that he had the rights to Doink from WWE, and he would post these pictures of like checks from WWE, but I'm sure it was like him taking out the garbage at like a house show in Mobile or something like that. But anyways, yeah, so they it was wild. They ended up spilling out into the street with cars coming. It was something, man. But Heidenreich reminded me every bit of Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, of like,
oh yeah, it just feels bad for the motherfucker.
Out. Yeah,
it's rough, man.
It's a tough gig for sure.
Yeah, wrestling's a tough gig. It's very similar to punk in a lot of ways, where you're traveling so far and sacrificing a lot of stuff to be a performer in that world, and getting paid like, they always talk about getting paid a handshake and a hot dog, you know. But like, even like when we were trying to pay people really well, it still felt very much like punk in a lot of ways. Like they were traveling, and some people would travel really fucking far for the opportunity. I think one of the things that helped, at least one of the things we were able to offer when folks did come, is, we always fed people.
Yeah.
We tried to put them up when we could. And then I thought we did a really good job recording the video and the video production of it and getting it out there to folks. So at least that might have helped. And I think it really did help a lot of folks get their name out a little bit more, and get some exposure out more, and have a good reel and so whatnot, or experience. But yeah, it's rough on these folks, man. And I think it's really rough for some of these people that came from the early 2000s, the 90s. we're just trying to relive the dream,
Yeah.
and it's just sad. I think the saddest is like going to some of these conventions and seeing some of these folks sitting at these tables just looking rough,
Yeah.
and just trying to get some shit signed. And
Yeah. There's that meme of Virgil like at a convention. I don't know if you've seen that, where it's him
no,
at his autograph table, and man, it's sad looking.
yeah, but I've met, gone to some of those conventions as a fan and met
Right.
some amazing people. Like Tito Santana comes
Oh,
to first in my
cool.
mind of being like, not trying to be like, hey, you gonna buy something?
Yeah.
Like just wants to talk and hang out, and he's a really, really nice guy,
Yeah.
and uh I last convention I went to, we set up a table for Fest Wrestling at WrestleCon. It was in Winston-Salem.
Okay.
Is that what it's called? WrestleCon? I think so.
Yeah.
And they were super awesome. They let us have a featured match. I think it was Jim Nasty Boys were defending the title there. Um, Let us have a table, which was cool. Nobody gave a shit. They're there to see like, you know, old timers and get famous autographs and pictures with people. But there was a few people that came up to the Fest Wrestling table and were super cool. We were giving out pins and stuff, buttons
Yeah.
and shit. But at that convention, I brought an old buddy who played in punk bands and was never really much into wrestling. He's my age, he's like mid-40s.
Okay.
Will Green. And Will Green's a character. He played in this punk band Qualiacha from Atlanta. So real Southern, real friendly,
Love it.
real crazy.
Yeah.
And he was just rolling up to old timers like in the bar, like afterwards at like the Marriott or whatever fucking hotel was across the street, and being like, "What's up, Sergeant Slaughter? How's it going, man? I'm Will Green." And they're like, "Hey, what's up, Will Green?" He's like, "Hey, how are you doing? You doing good? How you doing? You doing good?" Like shit like that. Like didn't want like a famous picture with them. Didn't really want to talk about wrestling.
He's
It was
really
more like just
interested.
talking to him on a human, emotional level
Yep.
about stuff,
Right.
And it was really, really cool
Right.
to see Will just having a good time and cutting up, and also seeing some of the wrestlers like
Yeah.
uh, Ricky Morton was another one like that. I don't think Will even knew who the fuck Ricky Morton was. He was just like, "This guy's fun. Let's hang out. You need a shot." And just
Yeah.
hanging out with Ricky Morton at the bar,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was good times. I mean, I haven't talked about wrestling in so long, so it's kind of nice to powwow with somebody about it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I honestly tell you, like once in a while, I'll follow and tune into NXT sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
like this past weekend, our old Fest Wrestling guy Desmond Xavier, his tag team just debuted there, and so I was like, "Oh, that's awesome for Des,"
Yeah.
Or I'll look up on like Instagram and see something happen with like Ruby Wright, and I'm stoked for her. Or,
Yeah.
AEW is right there in Jacksonville. A lot of people from Fest Wrestling are there, and that's like especially like Darby Allin and like
Yeah.
Colt Cabana and stuff. So it's kind of nice to see it, but man, I just kind of like gotten, it's just too much. There's too many wrestling promotions, and it's hard for me to like keep track of stuff, to watch it and to have the interest in it. You would think that like during quarantine when we were at home so much, I would have gone
Buck Wild.
super balls to the wall and
Yeah.
like watched more and more and more, but I actually watched less and less and less.
There you go. What were you always a just WCW WWF guy growing up?
I mean, as a kid, I was born in '76, so in the '80s, like you of course got into WWE. I mean, WWF, that was the thing. It was a cartoon. It was like life,
Yeah.
Hogan was like as popular as any movie star, or if not more.
Yeah.
But my brother, when I was about in the sixth grade, he was like, "Hey, I'm starting to get into wrestling. Let's go to a show." And the only thing that came through Roanoke, Virginia was NWA, which later became
Oh, cool.
WCW.
Yeah.
And so once a month, they would come to the Roanoke Civic Center, and my brother would take me. It was like a little tradition with the two of us. And then he kind of fell out, and I kept going with it, and would make like whoever my mom's boyfriend was at the time, take me, or like, but it was great days, man. Like that was like the the best in my head. Like it was like Road Warriors, Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, the Four Horsemen,
Yeah.
Dusty. I got to see Dusty as the Midnight whatever it was, the Midnight Runner. I can't remember, where he wore the mask and he came in on a horse.
Okay.
They don't even fucking ride a horse into the goddamn Civic Center. It was
Right.
awesome. And there was people like the early days of Terry Funk. I remember just Terry Funk. I was just being scared of fucking Terry Funk because he was just so wild and
Yeah. His blood just
um,
covered in blood and
yeah. So those are some great days, and I think that also made me the wrestling fan that I was at the time, where it felt real.
right.
It felt like good old boys beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
It didn't seem as cartoony as WWE was at the time.
Yeah.
So then when they transformed into WCW, I went with it because I was still fans of Steamboat, Sting, Luger, Flair at the time.
Yeah.
But eventually WCW just started getting real weak, and
Yeah.
WWE still was. And then when WWE went into the Attitude Era, they were doing something really cool by bringing in so much new talent.
Right.
But at the time, we were in college and getting back into it, and we all just wanted to see all the people we were familiar with. Like, oh shit, it's like,
Nash and
it was
Hall.
cool that
Yeah.
way. So I actually really never knew the Attitude Era until way later.
Mm.
In
Wow.
retrospect, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So I was born in '89. So I was 8, 9, 10 when Attitude Era was popping off. So I was like the target demographic of.
You were just running around going, suck it all the
Suck it.
time.
Yeah, man.
And my wife always talks about she grew up in Jersey.
Yeah.
And when, we were dating and stuff, she was like, oh, you're into wrestling. So you know what, that whole thing, like, were you one of those middle school kids running off with the suck it shirt all the time? And I was like, no, that was not. I was in college.
A little
one
bit after you.
and two, no, wasn't into that whole scene at all.
I remember we went on vacation once to Daytona. It had to have been like 95 or 6. And I've got like 20 cousins there, big family. And I remember one Sunday they were like, all right, we're all going to church. And we're all the kids were like, what, I don't want to go to fucking church. Just like, this is bullshit, and just like pissed off. And they took us to, it was a ruse. They took us to a WCW show in Daytona.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it
wasn't Back to the Beach, was it?
I can't remember. No. It was like it must have just been a house show, but I distinctly remember a bit where like Dungeon of Doom. Do you remember those? There's like these weird vignettes of like Hulk Hogan.
Well, Dungeon of Doom was like it was Earthquake, but he was like a shark guy, right? And Kevin Sullivan was like
the devil.
He was the leader of the Dungeon of Doom, right?
Yeah.
And then there was some guy who kind of was like Samoan but crazy looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally remember that.
I just remember.
Yeah, they were always out to get Hogan. That was when Hogan was in WCW, but he was like good Hogan.
Yeah, he was red and yellow still. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Doom came out to wreck shop, huh?
Yeah. I just remember watching the vignette on the screen that they had like in the Civic Center or whatever, and I was just like, what? Even as a kid, I was like, this is dumb. Like, is Hulk Hogan just like looking around this, smoky dungeon thing, and Kevin Sullivan is a weird devil character. Yeah.
If you want to get deep into Sullivan and you have the network, go and research early Kevin Sullivan shit, because he was way before his time, like doing some weird, him and like a woman, they were like a bit together, and that was some good old school shit. That was a lot of Florida promotions too back then. That's the good thing is fucked up and bullshit as WWE is sometimes, bonk, whatever. That network, if you want to like get it for free for a month and dive in, like there's so much good old documentaries and like conversations and just old footage and stuff. It's a really great channel
Yeah.
for wrestling. You could get that and not watch anything new and just be completely entertained.
Yeah, it's just that whole library, that back catalog of every wrestling promotion that's ever existed, up until
Yeah, I mean, they
WWE.
just fucking just bottom.
Fuck, dude. Okay, so when WCW, like in the dying days of WCW, when they were getting real wacky and just letting like anything was happening, like were you did you say you weren't watching around then, or you were?
Well, the thing we were watching, this is like, late 90s.
Okay.
I'm in college in Harrisonburg.
Yeah.
And we're watching Mondays, but in the summers, I didn't watch anything because in that time in the summers, I was Less Than Jake's roadie, and we would do Warp Tours. So there was no television whatsoever,
Right.
for the whole summer. And then one time I like didn't go back to school, and we went to Europe, Australia, and New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so that would have been almost a year of just no TV.
Yeah.
And so kind of like I was like kind of out of it. And then I moved to Gainesville in 2000, and I had a couple buddies, this guy Jimbo, Jake Crown,
Yeah.
and Troy Perlman, who's in Whiskey and Company and some other bands. And those were like my Gainesville wrestling buds.
Okay.
And so once in a while we would I remember us finding somebody who actually had cable television.
Yeah.
And paying for that ECW reunion pay-per-view. I can't remember what it was called, like Hammerstein Ballroom or some shit.
Yeah.
And us just getting lit and watching that.
Okay.
But it took a while. Honestly, it wasn't TV that got me back into wrestling. It was more like going to indie shows in Florida.
Yeah.
That got me back in it, because in my head, I had been to really crappy independent promotions in college and the early days of living here in Gainesville with those guys. And it was like these shitty house shows where they would bring in a Doink to headline, and it would just be a bunch of Florida old jobbers and shit.
Yeah.
And it was just fuck, man, even if this is $10, this is sad.
Yeah.
This is just kind of shitty. I can't drink enough to enjoy this, but then we just started going to, I think it was when NXT just started running house shows around here, and it was 10 or $15 to go see NXT. And we were like, oh, that's part of WWE. Let's just go check it out. And we were blown away because the talent was so great.
Yeah.
And so that kind of got me back into it. I remember before we did Fest Wrestling, I was trying to reach out through NXT and was like, come set up at Fest. Let's do this. We're a music festival. There's all these people here. And reached out. I remember going up to one of the commentary guys who later became Rich Bocchini, who does our commentary for Fest Wrestling. And he does MLW and some other promotions too now. And Rich was like, yeah, I'm way into bands. He's like, I love Appleseed Cast and Cursive and Lemuria. And we were just, before this wrestling show would start, we'd talk about Fest and music and stuff. And so he was trying really hard when he was working for NXT at the time.
Yeah.
It was him and Corey, what's his name,
Graves.
doing commentary.
Corey Graves.
Corey Graves, not Corey Fate. I want to say Corey Fate, but
Corey Feldman.
Corey Graves.
Corey Feldman was doing.
But yeah, they would just be the commentary guys, and so we would just punish Rich, and Rich would punish me back. I tried to punch him about wrestling, so it just never came to fruition. They ended up doing a big festival in Europe or something like that, and instead, and they were like, it's a compete clause or something like that, and I was like, really?
They're doing Leeds or Slam Dunk or something. I remember.
Yeah,
that, yeah.
But then we were doing pre-fest down in Tampa at Ebor.
Yeah.
And this guy Jerry, everybody calls him Lazy, that runs Orpheum, way into wrestling. And at the time, he was doing Shine Wrestling, which is an all-female promotion.
All female, yeah.
He was partners with the guys who were running that. And he was like, come on down, check this out. And so my wife and I would go down. Loved Shine. That's how we met Sue Young, Leva Bates, a lot of the female talent that came up working Fest. And so I was like, Lazy, let's get wrestling at pre-Fest, dude. You're into it. You already do it here at the venue. We can have the ring. And he's like, yeah, well, I'll talk to this guy, Sal. And so for like the first 2 years we brought wrestling to Fest, it was pretty much Lazy and this guy, Sal. And Sal's one of the guys that runs MLW now.
Okay.
I think. No, I'm sorry. I completely got that wrong. He doesn't run MLW. He does Evolve.
Oh,
wrestling.
okay.
And so we were trying to get with Sal, like, hey, let's do Evolve at Fest. And he was like, I don't know about that. Like, let's just do like a lucha show. And I was like, that's even more fun. I think the first time we did Kaiju Big Battle. He was like, Kaiju's going to come through. And if you don't know what Kaiju Big Battle is, it's just the easiest way to get people into wrestling. It's people that are wrestlers, really great wrestlers, dressed in giant costumes that are kind of like robots and Godzilla monsters wrestling in a ring with like fake cityscapes around them. Right. It's the easiest way to get over to a crowd of drunk punks.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. Like, and that was our first experience doing shows. And then Sal, like the third year, I was like, hey Sal, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do Evolve. What are we gonna do? And he's like, we're just not gonna do anything in the fall. And so I was like, oh, we're not gonna bring wrestling to Fest. And so I reached out to Lazy and I was like, man, I'm really bummed about this. He's like, dude, you've met enough people now. Just reach out to them and do it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did, which was super cool. So I got to thank Lazy for kind of getting Fest wrestling started. It was kind of the whole DIY thing. I was like, punk, like, well, nobody's going to bring it. Fuck it. We'll just do it.
Yeah.
You know?
And sometimes
that fearless attitude of like,
yeah,
how hard can it be?
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it just takes somebody being like, why don't you just do it? When, like you're saying, like, well, I wish wrestling would come here. And why don't you just do it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, it's just, and that's kind of the same mentality of when I was 16 in Roanoke, Virginia. Like, we wanted more bands to come through Roanoke because I was in a band, me and my buds. There was like 4 or 5 other bands in Roanoke.
Yeah.
But we got tired of being the only bands and playing with each other every fucking weekend.
Yeah.
So we just started to say, well, let's just try to bring bands here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I got into booking shows and promoting bands.
Yeah. Well, Roanoke still has that whole Lost City vibe that people can't shake, where it's like, am I going to die here? I don't know.
It's a different Roanoke, bud.
Wait. How many Roanokes are there?
So Roanoke, Virginia is Blue Ridge Mountains.
Okay.
The Roanoke you're talking about is like on the coast, and it's not even in Virginia. So that was like first settlers lost colony coming over.
Okay.
And then the whole like fucking township just like vanished.
Right. Well,
we all know what happened. They tried to overtake land that wasn't theirs, and Native Americans said, or indigenous people is maybe the proper term you should say. Basically, people that lived there first were like, fuck you, Whitey, and your fucking Christian attitude.
Yeah.
Get back on the boat and leave.
That stupid ass wooden boat you came here on.
Cut it out. Get out of here.
Cut it out.
But yeah, I've gotten that whole my life. That or like, I'm like, oh, I'm from Virginia, and somebody goes, oh yeah, so West Virginia. It's like, it's
man.
2 different states.
The original one. Yeah.
Fucking morons. 2 different states.
At least I know that much. I know there's 2, Virginia and West Virginia. Did you ever get super heavy into watching like New Japan or?
Yeah, especially, once Lazy showed me like Evolve, which was great, and NXT, it's kind of like you go down. It's like when you first get into like punk and you start buying records and you're opening up the insert and you're like, oh, who are they thinking? And then you like go to the record store and you're looking up those bands, or now the internet.
Right.
It was the same way with wrestling. You like find somebody you like, and then you look up like on the internet, like, oh, and then you find out they wrestled in this promotion, this promotion, this promotion.
Yeah. And
then you just go on YouTube and waste fucking 3 years of your life.
Yeah.
And so, really got into that. It's New Japan's one of the best promotions. Ring of Honor. I went to so many Ring of Honor shows. They would come through Florida a lot. And those years of going to WrestleMania, once we started going there, it's like initially went there to go to WrestleMania. And then after going to indie shows during Mania weekend, we kind of stopped going to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
We would just watch WrestleMania in a bar all together instead, and take the money we would have spent on one ticket at WrestleMania and go to indie shows for 4 days straight.
Yeah.
Um,
Save yourself
so
5 or 6 hours of
see better
WrestleMania.
shows,
Yeah.
see all the people that are going to be at WrestleMania probably a year later,
Yeah.
up close and personal with no restrictions.
Yeah.
It's a way cooler experience.
Yeah, man. Whenever
Yeah.
when WrestleMania was in New Orleans last, I went to the Supercard of Honor show, and it was
That's a
so
great
cool.
show. Yeah.
It was it was Cody Rhodes versus Kenny Omega, and I was just like, oh my god! And they had Young Bucks versus, I forgot who Young Bucks wrestled, but it was a ladders match, and it was just
Was that the same show?
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was me, Effie, Rich Bocchini, and Max.
Wow.
Who from Police Chases. We got 4 tickets together. And I'll tell you, the best was just listening to Effie do his own commentary
Yeah.
as Jim Ross.
Oh shit.
In the Jim Ross voice.
Yeah.
Over it, just cutting up and laughing. So him and Rich back and forth. Just
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. That
Yeah.
was a great show. And I remember at the end there was all this confetti and graffiti.
Yeah.
Confetti went everywhere. It exploded us, everything. And that was so much fun.
That was a great show, man. Yeah.
Yes, one of the bartenders, like, I guess we were drinking so much, the bartenders like gave me some weird voodoo necklace off her neck.
That's New Orleans. Yeah.
It
There
was
you
totally
go.
New Orleans. Man. Yeah, it was great. And then while we started that whole weekend off with Wildcat put on a show. It was like early in the day. It was like noon.
Yeah.
And we went to that, and that was super fun too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you were saying, I think if anybody is going to like WrestleMania week, because now it's a week of shows, I think doing it the way you said to do it is the best way.
Well, it's hard for a lot of people too. When you initially get back into wrestling, you want to see the people, the big names. You want to see the folks you grew up with, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of people who strictly that's their thing. Right. I hate elitist people who are like, you're such a mark.
Fucking nerds. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, you like wrestling. You're a fucking nerd. Shut up.
Right.
You're not better than anybody else. You know, but try it out. Just roll the dice with like one show. And there's a lot of cool indie stuff going on. I mean, this past year for Mania, we were Fest Wrestling. We were supposed to do Metal Cage. Like we worked for a year to get that show set up. Finding the venue, it was going to be awesome. Cigar City Brewery. Right there in Tampa.
Yep.
It'll be outside. It was like fucking Obituary, Municipal Waste, Nasty Savage, which is like some old stuff. Like we had the best. It was like the ultimate like We Are Family card. We had everything booked. We promoted it, and then COVID happened, and we canceled. We gave everybody their money back. Every single ticket got refunded, and it was just kind of like. I mean, I literally had like 30,000 handbill flyers that I just had to put in recycling bin.
Damn, dude.
Just like the show that never was.
Right. Yeah. Listening to, I know Jericho on his podcast, he had a lot of indie people or people that were, people in AEW. So that level, like high level indie, like AEW type people. He had him on his podcast whenever WrestleMania got canceled, because a lot of people, like especially wrestlers, this is like their big thing where they go to WrestleMania week and they've got so many matches set up with so many different promotions, and then it's just all ripped out from under. Nobody could help COVID, but it's just
no. And I mean, it was crazy too because we were one of the first shows of that week that like said, hey, we're not doing this, we're canceling.
Yeah.
But there were some that just waited up until minute. Like the very last minute to cancel. And there's some that just really were being dicks about like refunding people too,
Yeah.
which just sucks, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had that and Fest last year. It was bad. It
Yeah.
just, a lot worse things have happened to
Yeah.
people, and a lot of awesome things have happened.
Yeah.
We've all learned, I think, a lot about ourselves and how to connect again,
Yeah.
um, and how to be resilient in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And some of us have to deal with loss, you know,
Yeah.
and it's been trying times. So I shouldn't feel so bad about like complaining that we didn't get to do a fucking wrestling show.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. And it Fest is the music side of Fest has been able to. You guys have done cool, like you pretty steady like live stream sets of bands.
Yeah, we did Fest at home.
Yeah.
It's kind of something I need to do just to kind of keep myself a little busy and sane.
Yeah.
And also, I felt like bands really need an outlet
Yeah.
that we could help out to get their word out, get music out, give them a chance to still perform.
For sure.
I think we all needed it. I don't know. I haven't done a Fest at home since we did the Christmas Eve special.
Okay.
But I think we'll probably kick it back up next month in
Yeah.
February, hopefully.
Well,
It's just kind of hard once you lay off something for a while to do it. It's also a big commitment to do something every single week
yeah.
live.
For sure.
Um, but I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot as well with that. I
Yeah.
learned how to try to be out in front of stuff. I mean, a lot of people come to Fest every year and never knew who I was or see me. I
Right.
never tried to put myself out there,
Yeah.
and I'm still not comfortable with it. But
I'll blur your face out for the video version.
no,
of
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just it's never been about like I always trying to
Yeah.
put somebody else over in
Right.
a lot of ways, and that's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we get to do it again. But we talked about maybe doing like a Fest wrestling one, and doing it to where like maybe we could show old matches and have like people revisit their match or
Yeah.
commentary over it and stuff like that. But then like Effie has his own like Twitter thing going on every Monday night
Yeah.
that he's really built up and he's doing.
Yeah.
And so I feel like he's got that on lock,
Yeah.
and he's doing a great thing with that, and
Right.
we love him to death. And so I feel like maybe we'll do some kind of thing.
Yeah.
Who knows? We
Yeah.
still got time. Especially since the only show we really have planned in the works is Fest weekend, and that's not until the end of October.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully we can bring it back. I mean, you're doing a great thing doing these too. I mean,
Thanks. Yeah. I'm trying.
Yeah.
Well, I've been lucky to have interesting people on. And it's just something cool to do. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's like you kind of need to have the creative juices flowing and to have a connection again.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing of like one of the beautiful things about that's come out of this. I think that this format has opened up a lot, and people are connecting and getting to know each other. And I've personally exposed myself more, I guess, more of a connection with bands through Fest at Home
Right.
than I
You haven't
did.
exposed yourself to bands. I mean,
Well, it's like I listen to bands and I'm like, oh, that band's cool, and you book them to play Fest.
yeah.
But
I was
to
making
have,
a
like,
bad joke. Sorry.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm having like more of a connection, and that's kind of how Fest in the early days was.
Yeah.
Like we booked bands on Fest because they had come through previously that year.
Yeah.
We had gone to see them play. They'd stay at our house. We partied with them, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And then as Fest got bigger, less bands come through Gainesville because they're like, we'll just save Gainesville for when it's Fest because it'll be awesome, and so you don't have that personal connection as much anymore. And so this year it's been really rad. I'm really happy. I hope we get to continue to do it. Maybe we'll do something with Fest Wrestling that way. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, we've gone a long time here. I've enjoyed it.
Well,
we talked about the music side of Fest a little bit. I think
Well, maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime where we can
Absolutely.
do the music side,
Yeah.
and we can promote that to the people who like Fest the music, and push this
That's
one
the
more
music.
towards the Fest wrestling,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Um,
maybe, but some people that like both, like yourself,
a Venn diagram. But
Yeah. How's the band doing? How's things going with that?
uh, it's all right. It's like everybody else. We recorded a little bit, so we're
Good.
trying to figure out what we're gonna do with that.
Throw it in the garbage.
That's what it feels like we need to do. At this point. But
Nah,
no,
man.
hopefully, yeah, just like everybody else, man. Just hopefully something cool can come out of it. I don't know. We're trying to write more music, trying to
Good.
just stay on the ball. But I got some questions on my Instagram for you because
Okay.
I'm having Tony on from Fest. What are some questions?
Fun.
Uh, okay, here's one. Favorite? Do you have a favorite year of Fest?
I don't know if there's a favorite year.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all awesome.
yeah,
I would say the most, to me, like the first year has to be like, that's like the groundbreaking year. Like there's things that happened that year,
yeah,
and the progression of things, and like because it was the first.
yeah.
There's a lot of memories and experiences, and a lot of folks came together. We did a lot of like meetings in living rooms, like
Right.
drinking fucking Bush Light and
Yeah.
stuff, and like, just powwowing and talking. That was, Fest is very communal. But that year, I feel like there's moments from every year that'll be like, oh my God, remember when this happened? I remember
Yeah.
when this happened, and crazy stories.
Yeah.
Um,
Who was
Maybe someday we'll put a book out, and we'll talk a little
yes,
more about
do it. We'll do another podcast for the book. Uh,
that.
who was the headliners for the first year?
The funny thing was the headliner really for the first year was a Black Sabbath cover band.
Okay.
and we straight up just put on the flyer Black Sabbath.
Respect.
Um, yeah. So it was all people that were in punk bands and stuff from Gainesville, but they were fucking awesome. Against Me, that was like the first fest Against Me that we got to see. We got to watch Against Me come up a lot in Gainesville.
Right. Yeah.
But to see more than just Gainesville watching them and everybody going balls to the wall,
Yeah.
crazy. So that was really cool. Hot Water played the first year. We had people like Harmar Superstar perform, which is like crazy to think that, Harmar came down. Because I'd met him in Minneapolis and we powwowed, and I was like, dude, come down to Gainesville. We're doing this fest. I think that was like it for big bands, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Festival was pretty small,
Yeah. Just Against Me, pretty small. But I know at the time I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah.
What is the strangest not strangest, but is there a band that has tried to get on or has gotten on Fest that is from a wild country? Like you're like, I would never expect a punk band from this place.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've always opened Fest up to overseas bands, and we have that showcase every Sunday at Lucy's.
Right.
We call it the Foreign Bodies Showcase. Maybe we just call it the Foreign Bodies Showcase. I don't know if anybody else does.
Yeah.
And so a lot of bands reach out. I mean, and so that is awesome. I mean, I feel like it's always interesting when you have any band travels that far to play a fucking small punk festival. It's amazing. And they're doing it all on their own dime for the most part.
Right.
We had a band from Russia play. Fuck if I remember what they're called. We've had, I think we had a band from Korea play. It's hard for me to remember. Like
North Korea?
We've had,
North Korea or South Korea?
Has to be South Korea. North Korea, they didn't let a band exist in North Korea.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I can't remember, honestly.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to have the bands from Japan come because majority of them don't speak English and they
Yeah.
don't come with like anybody that can speak English.
Right.
So it's always interesting to like navigate that little road of like everybody's very happy that
Yeah.
you're here and you're happy that you're here. But like this, there's definitely a communication gap of like how things go, but it always works, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I wish I remembered more, but it's like, it's
I'm
too many years, man.
Yeah, I know. Too many years. You get hit up by so many bands or so many bands
of these
messaging.
too.
Okay, so Tony, for this podcast, I just Googled your name. I read, the interviews that I was able to find, and in most of them, there's a recurring note that you're hitting of this is a DIY festival. There's never going to be like a weird sponsor. It's never going to be Live Nation presents, fest. It's never going to be a Budweiser or whatever, Ticketmaster, right?
Yeah.
But with me asking questions on my Instagram for this podcast, I was reached out to by a couple of corporations.
Oh.
Yeah, and so
Okay. Who's willing? Who wants to do the dance?
well, I'm gonna show you here, because these corporations were nice enough to send me mock-ups of what it would look like if they, if they were, to sponsor. And what I
Gotcha.
wanted, and I feel
Hey
like,
man, 2020 was rough. So
right, yeah. And so I feel like I'm more of a, I'm not, I don't know. I'm an in-between guy. I'm more partial to Fest. I'm more protecting Fest than I would be these corporations. But yeah, I'm just the middleman here. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen with you.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you these graphics that were sent to me by these companies. Okay. Let's see here.
All right. Oh Lord.
Okay.
Okay.
And okay. So
Do I get to rate them or something?
can you see my screen? No, I want you to, and like I said, you would never choose a corporation to be the face of Fest.
I just see somebody's card that says you're a new web pilot.
Yeah. This is my desktop. You can see it?
Oh, okay. Yes, I see your desktop.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what I'm about to show you is the
that could be the new corporate face of Fest.
the graphics. Yeah. So
Let's do it.
and we'll you choose like after I show you all three, you can just choose the one that you think best suits Fest.
Okay.
Okay.
If any.
So here we go. Right. So I was approached by Cracker Barrel,
Oh,
Old Country Store.
Crackle Barrel already sponsored Young Bucks and some wrestling stuff, and that worked out pretty
Right.
well. Was that
Right.
the early days of AEW they sponsored?
I believe so. I think one of their I don't know if it was Double or Nothing, but one of their pay-per-views.
Love country cuisine, hate racist ethics.
Absolutely.
What's next?
Absolutely. So hard pass on Cracker Barrel, Country Store.
Yeah, it's gonna be a pass on Cracker
Okay,
Barrel.
that's fine. I respect that.
Yeah.
The second one here. Fest presented by Dr. Thunder.
Oh, well, is Dr. Thunder even? Oh, it's a great value. So Walmart. Pretty much.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Dr. Thunder. I thought would be like an indie thing, but it's the knockoff, cheap version of
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
Right.
But I think Dr. Thunder was around before Walmart.
Wow. Walmart
Might have been. Do some research. That's a hard, like, we've never had a soda sponsor really.
Right.
Monster Energy drink one year, like kind of sponsored, but didn't give us any money. They gave us a bunch of Monster Energy drinks
Mm.
and like a hats. And I
What else
remember
do you
we had
need?
the fest after party, and there was a bunch of Monster Energy drinks, and the poor rep was like trying to be like, "Yo, check it out, bro. Here's this stuff," and all the people at the after party were like, "Fuck you! I don't want this garbage." And it was like
Hey,
he
man.
was so defeated. He like just kind of packed his shit up and left, and I was like, "Wow, that sucks." Like fest people just really dissed this guy. They didn't
Don't
give us money. They were just trying to give us product,
yeah,
and people didn't want it.
don't you want to drop into the half pipe with a cool monster?
It's funny is now I bet you if Monster like tried to sponsor Fest, people would be into it. That's what's fucked up now.
Monster's coming around on the people, I believe.
But Dr. Thunder, I know Scotty Swimba would be stoked on the Dr. Thunder.
Mm,
He
okay.
likes Dr. Pepper, and he was mixing Dr. Pepper with tequila for our Christmas special we did, and he swears it's good. He swears it's good. I was calling it the Pittsburgh Margarita. So this would be more of Alabama
Yes,
margarita.
absolutely. Okay, so this one is still on the table, and then we have one final one, um, where it is Airwalk Fest in association with Fest.
So Airwalk just buys Fest, pretty
I
much.
don't know all the legal ramifications, you know.
It's Airwalk Fest.
It's Airwalk Fest in association with Fest.
I will say this: as a kid and growing up skating,
Mm-hmm.
Airwalk, a lot of it was brought. Like I love it, love the Airwalk,
Yeah.
full supporter. Now, as a 44-year-old man,
Mm-hmm.
I think the last time I saw Airwalk was when I had to return something to J.C. Penney's after Christmas. So I feel like Airwalk is not the same skate punk
Mm.
uh, mentality. It'd be like if Fest was sponsored by like Journeys
Yeah, that's fair. I think.
or Gadzooks, if there's even a Gadzooks anymore.
No, it might be.
Um,
It might be more.
out of the three, if I had to,
Yeah.
if it was like a Mary fuck kill, is that what it's called?
Sure. Yeah, you have to. It's you're contractually obligated by doing this
I would
podcast.
kill
to
Crackle
use-
Barrel.
Okay.
I'd marry Dr. Thunder and probably fuck Airwalk because the logo looks just so good.
Yeah.
It's kind of it kind of looks good. Like I could see that on top of a flyer, but it might say like Limp Biscuit on that flyer instead of Gorilla Biscuits. That's all I'm saying.
I'll see what I can do. I'll reach back out to Airwalk and see what
Yeah.
their thoughts are.
You know, tell them to call me on my my car phone.
Ah.
Yeah, that was entertaining. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean,
I
well,
kind of want Dr. Thunder now. I might have to go to Walmart and buy some Dr. Thunder.
there you go. Yeah. You can stay on if you want to talk some more, but I think I'm going to wrap up the episode.
I would love to come back and
Yeah.
chat more. It's been fun. I'd like to, let's do it again, and
sure.
maybe we can do more fest stories and fest talk
Yeah.
times. But yeah. I wish I had more like fun wrestling stuff to talk about. I feel like you caught me like to talk about wrestling when I'm like the least like
Sorry.
amped on wrestling
Yeah.
right now. It's not that I'm not amped. It's more like I'm laying dormant,
Okay.
in a way.
Okay. Well,
Like I'm not caught up. Like
Right.
I haven't been watching. So
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, on that note, I'll do one last question
okay.
that I came up with. I don't know if you're familiar. Do you listen to the Bruce Pritchard Something to Wrestle With podcast?
No, I don't listen to podcasts.
Oh, Tony. Okay.
Everybody says it's awesome, like
Yeah.
especially Scotty Swimba and Max, who do enjoy wrestling, and Rich,
Yeah.
who's commentator for Fest Wrestling, always told me that that's one you got to listen to because
It's
he's
great.
just like that,
All-
and cornets, like
Yeah.
babbling is always good too.
Yeah.
I'm not a podcast person.
Right. But okay, that's fair.
I think if I commuted for work,
Yeah.
maybe I would be more into podcasts,
Yeah.
but I work from home.
Right.
So like I just kind of listen to NPR.
Wow. Fucking
Right, put my
nerd.
glasses on for that one.
There you go.
You know?
But okay, but so there was a funny bit that he told on one of his episodes about how um, one of the uh, one of the events they were doing in Saudi Arabia in the past couple of years, like the Saudi princes who were like funding it. I
You
guess
were talking WWE, right?
WWE, yeah.
Okay.
They didn't. I don't know if they're just out of touch with reality or they don't understand. But they were asking
Yeah,
WWE
the Saudi princes are kind of out of touch with reality.
for sure,
Like Saudi Arabia is kind of out of touch with reality
for
a
sure.
little bit.
But they were asking if they could get this is like 2-3 years ago. They're asking if they could get a match with Andre the Giant and Ultimate Warrior. They didn't.
It was just after they've passed, they're deceased.
Yeah, right. They didn't understand that like these two guys were legitimately had passed away in real life.
They're just like they thought you could just bring in another Ultimate Warrior.
I don't know. I don't know
You
if they
know, at some point, probably McMahon's going like, "You guys know it's this much money. Like, can't we just dress up fucking Goldberg?"
right.
You know?
Yeah. But anyway, in that same vein, is there a match, a dream match of yours that you can think of, alive or dead, of wrestlers? Like a dream match of yours?
Dream match for me, be two.
Okay, go for it.
And I would pair a modern fest wrestler with somebody that I grew up with.
Okay.
I would love to see Effie versus Flair.
Ooh,
So
buddy.
much attitude, so much business going on. I mean, he is the gay Ric Flair in my eyes, you know.
That's great.
Um, that would be the ultimate for me.
Right.
Tag team wise,
Okay.
Road Warriors, you know, Tully and Arn versus Road Warriors was like the best going up.
Yeah.
And same with the Road Warriors run with the Midnight
Right.
Express, Midnight Express versus Rock and Roll Express. All that shit was going on. But we tried to have for Love Cup, which is the last show we did, tried to get Rock and Roll Express now to go and wrestle the Gymnasty Boys. And it could have happened. I just didn't have the money. Rock and Roll Express needed X amount of money. And I fully, like, after talking to them, like, I 100% agree. You
Yeah.
deserve this kind of money. I just don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, how about we just do it for this much? And I'm like, I still don't have that much.
Yeah.
So I respect and appreciate you.
Yeah.
I totally understand. You know, this is how it is. So those would be, you know, one of them is actually possibly obtainable and somebody else could probably do it, you
Yeah.
know, hopefully. And I think that would be one hell of a fucking match show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would see. And I'd watch, you know, if we could resurrect the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
But the closest, I mean, there's nobody ever gonna be the Road Warriors to roll out the fierceness that they did, the sheer destruction.
Yeah.
When NWA would have those little house shows we would watch every Saturday morning, and it was just week after week, the Road Warriors rolling up and just destroying two dudes, two jobbers.
Yeah.
You know, and then cut a promo talking shit about on Flair. You know, it was great. It's great. You can never. The people will try to emulate that. You can't replicate that. Don't even try. It's dumb. It's like, you know, it's not worth it.
For sure.
You're gonna lose. Nobody's never gonna make that better.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I've enjoyed our talk, man.
I've enjoyed it too, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome to hang out, powwow, and thanks for digging me out of wrestling. Now I'm probably gonna email somebody and ask them for their WWE code so I can go back and watch a bunch of old shit this weekend.
just make up a new email.
Yeah. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, Tony, you had options, but you decided to talk to me, tonight, and so I
thanks.
appreciate that.
Yeah, hell of a Friday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm gonna make some dinner and watch Disney Plus.